Okay, today we're going to work on the icy snowflake throw, and this is the basic pattern that we're working on today. This part of the tutorial is going to be the snowflake. You see it's more of a circle, and then we eventually work the blue into these rows here. So first thing we got to do is start our chain, and you want to, it says chain 8 with a slip stitch in the first chain to form a ring. Well, we need to start with the slip stitch here. So we wrap around twice, take and pull over one, then take the second one, pull it all the way over, and you see it makes a nice slip stitch. And it's good to have some of this to work into, tuck into, so if you cut too close you wind up losing your work. So we tighten that up on the crochet. You need to hold the yarn however you get a good tension on there. I tend to get too tight, so I tend to just hold on to it with the 2 fingers here. And on a chain you just want to take and wrap it around, pull it through. There's one, wrap it around, and I like to work my way up the chain so I can keep it consistent. There's 2, whoops, there's 3. I'm using a soft yarn, wants to come apart. It depends on the yarn that you use. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so you don't actually count the first chain that you did. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and you do not count the one on the hook either. So you go back into the first stitch. I usually try to go 1 under and 2 over, and it tends to be a tighter whenever I'm stitching that way. I hold on to the yarn here and then pull through, which is a slip stitch, and your beginning circle is actually formed. Now for round 1 it says to chain 3. This is going to count as your first double crochet. 1, 2, 3, and then it says to do 23 double crochets in the ring. So again, I hold on to this and we'll work around this actual tail while we're doing this, and as we go around it works right in. So a double crochet, you loop over once, go into the hole, grab your yarn, pull through, so you should have 3 on the loop, grab it, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2. You do that twice, that's why it's called a double crochet. And I try to neaten it up. You're going to be pretty tight through the circle and bring it right to here so that you have no gaps when you get around. So there's 1, we've got 2, again we wrap around once, go in the hole, grab the yarn, pull it up. Now you wrap around, yarn over, go through 2 loops, wrap it around, go through 2 loops. And we do this 23 times. You grab it around, wrap it around once, pull up, 2, and 2. Wrap it around, 2, and 2. I just kind of tighten it up as I'm going around because it is going to be tight when you finally get around. And when you're doing this, you may lose track. It's always good to triple count, you know, to count multiple times, just to make sure that you don't, when you mess up on a row, miss a stitch or something, it affects your pattern all the way through. And so it's good to always verify that you've got all your hooks, all your chains and whatnot to work into. Now, the easy way to tell on this, each one of these stitches is actually, we call them a post. You could see here. Here's one. And here, there's two. There's three posts. You can actually count from the top too. 1, 2, 3. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, until you got around to 24. And now we get to the last stitch. This is 23 double crochets. If you count the first chain 3 as your first double crochet, you'll have 24 stitches around. And now we're supposed to double crochet, slip stitch in the third chain from the hook. We got 1, 2, 3. And that gets a little difficult sometimes to work in a chain, and it depends on what you're doing with the stitch. It's easier to just kind of go between here, and you pull up and through, and now it's joined. Now, because we're actually going to work multiple stitches into our beginning chain here, that's just going to cause it to gap, and you're going to see it later. So I like to actually add in a slip stitch into the next actual stitch. And let me do that again. You can see, so I slip stitch in here, and you can see there's 2 on top. It changes your pattern if you only go through one or the other. So you go through 2, and it makes it a little bit tighter, neater. It doesn't like pull away at your fabric. So you pull through here and through this stitch, and there's your slip stitch. Now from here, we're going to actually work what they call a shell. We do our beginning shell is going to include 3 chains, 1, 2, 3 chains, and that counts as your first double crochet. Then we lap it around and do a double crochet in that same hole. 2 and 2, and then we chain 2, 1 and 2. Then we do another double crochet in that same hole. So we go 2 and 2, wrap it around in the same hole, grab it, we go through 2 and 2. And this is what they call your shell. And so the first shell's made. You'll be working the further next row out of the tip of the shell, or the middle of the shell here in this chain 2 spot. So now we're going to do a double crochet. It says skip 2, 1, 2, and then you work into the third double crochet, and we make another shell again. So we pull it up, we got 2 and 2, first double crochet. So 2 double crochets, and my yarn separated again. I'm just never afraid to pull it out. It's part of the price to pay when you're using a little bit softer yarn. You just pay attention. 2 double crochets, 1, 2, chain, and then 2 more double crochets, and then double crochet, go through 2 and 2 loops. And so we're going to actually do a total of 8 double crochets. Again, we skip 2, 1, 2, hole in the middle here, and we're going to do another shell here. Like I said, we're going to do a total of 8 double crochets. Two chains, 2 double crochets. This pattern does need you to go ahead and make sure that stitches are kind of nice and tight. It wouldn't look right if it was just loose. You wind up with kind of, it just doesn't work out well. Double crochet, skip 2, work into the third double crochet there. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Okay, double crochet, skip 2, work in the third, so I wrapped it around, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. The next shell here, and when you can see the pattern, it kind of just helps. You could just whip right along. By the time you do the 35 of these to make this blanket, you know, you'll be good. You could just kind of start whipping along by the time you get further along. And then this should be the last shell. Again, double crochet, skip 2, work into the third chain. You see there's 2 chains left, and you could count them here. There's the like little V's that are in here. Each one of those is just the top of the double crochet. Well, that didn't want to work real nice. Okay, we're going to work our last shell, 1, 2, work in the third chain, or the third double crochet. And you see there's 2 chains left. Again, you can see here the little V's is how you can count those. Two chain. And 2 double crochet, and this is our last shell. And they usually tell you at the end of the row, you know, how many shells you're to have. 1, 2, I'm sorry, we count to make sure we have 8. And you can see the point here, so there's 1, and there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So it's good. So I'll go ahead and do the joining stitch. Again, we're not going to be working into the stitch this time. So again, it's just easier to kind of go between the two when you're joining them together. And then we do a slip stitch working up to where we're going to start our next row. So you go in between here, see the little V, and just pull through and through. And this time we're going to work into the hole here, the point, the chain 2 space. So pull it through and through, and now you're ready for row 3. Now on row 3, or I'm sorry, row 2 here, we're actually going to chain up 3, do a beginning shell again, 2 and 3. That counts as your first double crochet in here, and there's 1, whoops, and 2, chain 2, 2 double crochets, and there's your beginning shell for row 3. Then we're chaining 2 between each shell this time on this row, and we do a shell again in the beginning, in the point here of the shell. So we go through 2, and we go through 2. Chain 2, and then 2 double crochets. We chain 2, to go into our next double crochet, our next shell. Again, double crochet in the point of the next double crochet here. And we do this around till we've done 8 double crochets. Now we're going to do the last shell here. Chain 2. 2 double crochet. And to hold to the pattern, we're going to chain 2 before we join. So you chain 1 and 2, and we go ahead and join. And the slip stitch, again, we're not going to be working out of this stitch. It's easier to just go through it and join it this way. And then you want to check to make sure that you've got 8 shells. You got your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You check them, make sure there's 2 stitches, 2 chains in between each, and make sure your pattern's consistent there. Now we're actually going to slip stitch up and do row 4. So we slip stitch here again, we slip stitch in here, and then now we're ready for row 4. So we chain up 3, counts as our first double crochet. This time the shells are going to have 3 double crochets in them. So I'm going to call them large shells, just to make a difference. It's easier for me if I could keep patterns going. And then we go chain 2, and then 3 double crochets. And then we try to pull my yarn out. I'm sorry, getting too much tension. Then we chain 2 and do it again in the point of the next shell. Again, the large shell is 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and 3 double crochets. Chain 2 and work into the next shell. See here, the next shell. Now we're going to be working into the stitches here as we come in with the blue. So you want to make sure that you keep that consistent, the chain 2, and then you have the 3 shells. And I get lost in my pattern sometimes, and oops, I only did 2, so I'll just rip it out and do it again to make sure it stays consistent. And so we'll meet you around on the other end to join this. And then our last shell, a large shell that is. Chain 2, then we chain 2 and we join it in the same in between the where the chain is and the first double crochet. And then it says to finish off. So you've slip stitch through, cut yourself some length of tail here so you have something to work in. You pull it, chain it through, pull it through, and then pull it tight. And that's the end. And then you want to actually tuck in that end to finish it off. And I already know by looking ahead on the pattern that we're going to be working through over this chain 2 space in all of these. And so I'm going to actually take and tuck my yarn into this space here. You could tuck it down through the post or wherever it works. I just know we're going to be actually trying to get stitches into these, so I don't want to interfere with, cluttering this up, so that I can still work the blue stitches into these stitches here. So I'm going to run it here, or you run it down in the post and work it out through here. I use a tapestry needle or whatever blunt end needle works, and you can fit your yarn through. I'm using a number 4 yarn, but it just depends on the brand and the softness of it, whether you can get it through or not. Go ahead and turn this, make it nice and tight up, make it a little bit easier to get in through the eye, fold it over, push it through, sort of. Okay, so we get that in, and then I turn the work around and go ahead and just work through these loops however it works. Get it through, and it's the same color, so it'll be hidden. Go ahead and pull it through, and then on the way back you want to make sure you're not going into the exact same hole, because you just pull it right back out. So go ahead and work your way around another hole and just tuck it through. And I zigzag through basically a total of 3 times here, and that makes it nice and secure. But before I go in the 3rd time, I kind of make sure it's not too tight and it's locked in. Again, work through a different hole. Pull that through, pull out the needle, and it's nice and tight. If you actually tuck it in with the crochet hook, as some people do, when you pull on it, it just starts sticking out. You wind up trimming it down and down. So here you can cut it nice and tight. It's nice and secure. I have not had these come apart on me. And then you come down here and you see there's a little bit left over from when I was tucking it in on the circle. Go ahead and trim that. And your stitch is nice and tight. And just to kind of recap on this, I mean, it's easier to do these if you can kind of just find the pattern. You got 24 double crochets in here, chain 8 to make your hole, 24 double crochets. You go up and you work your shells, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. So you got a shell, 8 shells back to back. You go up to the next row, row 3, you're doing your shells again, but you got the shell, chain 2, shell, chain 2. So you have something to work into. You have to have that extra space. And then the 4th row, you have large shells. You're doing the 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, and then a chain 2 in between. And you could see how your pattern turns out. And again, those extra spaces, those chains 2 spaces, is where we're going to be working these into. That'll be on phase 2.